Special products. Let's see what happens when we multiply the following pairs of binomials. First, 2x plus 5 times 2x minus 5. That gives me 4x squared minus 10x plus 10x minus 25. When I combine the like terms that are in the middle, I have just 4x squared minus 25. Now over here, 4x times 4x, 16x squared. 4x times negative 7y is negative 28xy. 7y times 4x is a positive 28xy. And 7y times negative 7y is negative 49y squared. Combining those like terms in the middle, I have just the first and the last terms. The same thing happens with this last one. 1 minus 3x, 1 plus 3x. We get 1 plus 3x minus 3x minus 9x squared. The middle terms combine and drop out, and I have just the first and the last terms. This is called the product of a sum and a difference. So for any real numbers a and b, if I have a plus b times a minus b, it will always have the middle terms drop out and give me just a squared minus b squared. Now this is when a is the same and b is the same. I just have different signs for the middles. This is also called multiplying conjugate pairs, where the numbers in the factors being multiplied together are the same, but the middle signs are different. Let's multiply this set of conjugate pairs. I get x times x is x squared. X times 3 is 3x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x, and those cancel each other out. And negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. And since the terms are the same but the middle sign's different, we know these are conjugate pairs. The middles are going to drop out, so we might as well not worry about the OI of the FOIL method here. We've multiplied the first two terms. Let's multiply the last terms. 3y times a negative 3y is a negative 9y squared. Again, we have a set of conjugate pairs multiplying. So let's multiply just the first. A squared times a squared is a to the fourth. Minus b squared times b squared is b to the fourth. Now the question here is a plus b quantity squared equal to a squared plus b squared? Well, let's see. What does a plus b quantity squared actually mean? It means a plus b times a plus b. So a times a is a squared. A times b is ab. B times a is ab. And b times b is b squared. When I combine my like terms from the middle, I get a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. That's definitely not the same as just a squared plus b squared. So we'll say no on this question. In fact, we can square a binomial without having to FOIL. Look at the table and see if you can eventually see a pattern and fill in the blanks. The first one we have is x plus 5 quantity squared. That's x squared plus 5x plus 5x plus 25 is x squared plus 10x, combining those like terms, plus 25. X minus 3 quantity squared is x squared minus 3x plus 9. Combining like terms, I get x squared minus 6x plus 9. Let's look at the questions here. Where does the first term come from? The first term comes from simply squaring the first term in the parentheses. Now where does the last term come from? The last term here was 25. The last term here was 9. Apparently that comes from just squaring the last term. Now what will the sign of the last term be? If we're squaring a 5 here and we get positive 25, and we're squaring a negative 3 and we get positive 9, it should be that the sign of that last term will always be positive. With that information, we can complete the blanks in this line. 2x plus 5 quantity squared is 4x squared plus 10x plus 10x plus 25. I know my first term comes from simply squaring that first term of the binomial. So it will be 4x squared. For my last term, it was the result of squaring the last term, and it will always be positive. So I have a positive 25. Now I'm going to black out the work in the middle, and we can just figure out what's going on here. So 3x plus 7 quantity squared. We would square the first term, put it here. We square the last term, put it here. And the sign of that third term is always going to be positive. Now I wonder, what is the sign of the middle term? Well, here I had a positive, here I had a negative, here a positive and a positive. How does that correlate to the binomial we were squaring earlier? Well, this is a positive, we end up with a positive there. A negative, we end up with a negative. Positive, 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 positive. If the pattern holds, and it does, this negative will determine that this is going to be a negative 126x. Now let's find out what the product of 4x minus 3 squared is. So the first term, we're going to square 4x, so I get 16x squared. My last term is going to be a positive. 3 squared is 9. Now for the last question. What does the middle term have to do with the original binomial? Well, let's look at that. What does 10x have to do with x and 5? What does negative 6x have to do with x and negative 3? How about 20x? What does it have to do with 2x and positive 5? Well, it's interesting. Our middle term is coming from adding together those two middle terms, which is x times 5 and 5 times x. So what we're doing is multiplying those two numbers in the binomial and doubling them, because we have two of those numbers every time, so we'll double them. So let's see, 2x times 5 is 10x. We double it to get 20x. 3x times 7 is 21x. We double that to be 42x. 7 times negative 9 is negative 63x. We double that and we get negative 126x. So what will be our middle term here? We have a 4x times negative 3. That gives me a negative 12x, and I double that as a negative 24x. So we come to our squaring a binomial rule. For any real numbers a and b, a plus b squared equals a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, and a minus b squared equals a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. What we want to do is, when we're squaring a binomial, not have to write it out as two binomials and then use the FOIL method. We need to use this property of squaring binomials to make the process quicker. Let's multiply here. 3/4 a minus 4 quantity squared. So we don't want to write this binomial out twice and FOIL it. We want to use our new property. 3/4 a all squared is 9/16 a squared. Our last term is going to be -4 squared, which is a positive 16. My middle term, I need to be 3/4 times a times -4 doubled. I do know that the sign will be negative, and we can come over here and do some scratch paper work if you like. 3/4 a times -4 times 2. So my 4 cancels my -4, and I have 3a times -2. That gives me a -6a. So my middle term is -6a, and I'm finished squaring that binomial. 1 minus 4a quantity squared. Let's go ahead and use our squaring a binomial property. So we have 1 squared is 1. Our last term is going to be 16a squared. And our middle is 1 times -4a and double that, so a -8a. 3x minus 5 quantity squared. Square the first term, square the last term. Now multiply those terms together and double. 3x times -5 is -15x. Doubled is -30x. 4b minus 5 times 4b plus 5. Now remember, this is multiplying conjugate pairs. So I'm going to multiply 4b and 4b and get 16b squared. I know that my OI of the FOIL method will cancel out, so I don't bother with that and waste time on it. But I have -5 times 5 is -25. X times x plus 3 quantity squared. Now first we need to go ahead and square the binomial and then multiply by the x, because that's the order of operations. So we'll just let the x hang out in front, and x plus 3 quantity squared is going to be x squared for the first term, 9 for the last term, and x times 3 is 3x, doubled is 6x for the middle term. Now we just need to distribute the x in front to every term in the trinomial. So I have x cubed plus 6x squared plus 9x. Now we have quite a long problem, but if you look at it, it's not going to be that bad. I have x plus 2 times x minus 2 is an x squared minus 4. Then I have an x plus 1 times an x minus 1 is x squared minus 1. Now I need to go ahead and multiply these two binomials. We'll go back to FOIL. This is not one of our special products. So x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times -1 is -x squared. -4 times x squared is -4x squared. And -4 times -1 is +4. Now I need to go ahead and combine my like terms in the middle, and I have x to the 4th minus 5x squared plus 4. That covers this section. Go ahead and try your homework. Be sure to let me know if you have questions.